Hey there, heroes. Emmett here again from H4H Heroes with Heroes Hype. We're in downtown Port Jervis, New York. I'm going to give you a little overview of the history of comics. Before I do, I want to know if you could put in the comments what hooked you into comic books. For me, I used to read joke books, and it was all right. I read a couple of books, but I had two friends put a book in my hand, Swamp Thing, the Alan Moore series. It was just out of this world. It was the first comic to leave and abandon the comic code from the major companies. And it was just such a crazy, wild story and amazing art. And yeah, it really hooked me. And at one time, I actually owned every single issue of Swamp Thing. But so if you can, put in the comments what comic hooked you into comic books. And if you have any questions, leave them there also. So the overview of the eras of the comic books. So in the screen, we're going to insert examples of the Golden Age, which was 1930 to 1950, the early 50s. Comics like Action Comics #1, recently, if you saw it in the news, sold for $3.2 million. So you should have been saving your comics, old man. So the comic code came out in 1954. And in 1954, Congress was looking into juvenile delinquency, and there was people saying that it was due to comic books. So the comic companies jumped on that right away, and they created the comic code so that they could self-edit themselves instead of having a government group censor them. I actually feel that was the end of the Golden Age. A lot of people say it went to 1956. But either way, the Silver Age started around that time to 1970. It also is no slouch. It has Amazing Amazing Fantasy 15, which was the first appearance of Spider-Man. That book recently sold for $1.1 million. So again, there's valuable books in every era. It moved on to the Bronze Age, which I'm most familiar with because it was 1970 to 1985, pretty much when I was growing up. So this was the rise of the true indies. First was one of the comic companies, Eclipse, Red Circle. There was a lot that came out, and a lot of great authors and artists. Harold Chalkin's American Flag was amazing. And then Mike Grell did John Sable. A little quick story about that is I told you before, I was hanging out in a comic store, Mile High Comics in Denver, Colorado, and I was reading this book. It was mercenaries and spies, and it really tickled my fancy. I loved it a lot. And one day they had in their shop Mike Grell, and he signed that book for me. I no longer have it. So if you know anybody that has two Emmett from Mike Grell on the inside lower cover, send me a message because I'd like to buy it back. I'd like to have that again. Mike Grell has done so much work. He really, for both Marvel and DC and Independence. He did the Longbow, Green Arrow, which a lot of the stuff that you see on television is kind of loosely based on. So you should go out and find those copies of Mike Grell. And go look for, in the quarter box, in the 50-cent box, you'll find a lot of these early Independents, and they're great reads. Mike Grell is not only a great artist, but also a very good author. So then we move on to the modern age. 1985 to today, some of the things that happened. DC came out with a new imprint called Vertigo. They moved a lot of their, I'd say, more unusual titles over to that, and then also came out with a lot of new titles, young artists and young writers, and they were allowed a lot more leeway of what they would write about, their topics, and their interest. Swamp Thing was one of those books that moved to Vertigo, and it just got crazier. So also in the early 90s, Image came about. 9 creators got together. Most notables is Jim Lee, who's now helping run DC. Todd McFarlane, who created Spawn, which is still running today. Issue, it's got to be over 260 now. Also, Rob Liefeld, which a lot of people give Rob Liefeld a hard time, but at 18 years old, he broke into comics with a look that was new and unusual, and at that time, it was hugely popular. So don't hate on Rob Liefeld. So they also brought us Eric Larson, who created Savage Dragon. Youngbloods was Rob Liefeld. The Wildcats was Jim Lee. And again, Spawn was created by Todd McFarlane. So that's basically the history, the quick and dirty history of comics in the world today, and from the 1930s on. And hopefully you'll see the examples in the screen and be interested in collecting some comics. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. Here's Emmett again, and I'm coming to you with my picks. I have to give you a pick from the previous week because I only gave you 4, forgot the 5th one, but it's going to be Black from Black Mask. Number 1 came out 2 weeks ago. You should go out and find it. It's an interesting take on the world. So you can only be a superhero if you're African American. Something in their genes allows them to only create superheroes, and it's a whole different look at the world. It's going to be a real interesting read. Stay on this one. The next one will be Briggsland. That is this week. It's an independent on Dark Horse. Now, this is about a family who's secessionists. They're kind of anti-government. They have a very big stake of land, and they're controlling it. And the husband has been incarcerated for a long time, like the patriarch, and he's been running it from in there. But the matriarch, his wife, takes over, and so it's a female leader. It's going to be, so far, it's been a great read. You should go out and pick that one up also. And then for all people, around my age, The Lost Boys on Vertigo. So the pop culture movie is back, and it's put in comic form, and it's really cool. Just go check it out, especially if you were a big fan of that movie. Okay, on Marvel, Uncanny Avengers, number 15. Also, it's the now number 1. It's the aftermath of Civil War II. It's a good read, good art. If you've been following along with the Civil War, you really need to pick up this book. Then there's Rebirth. DC is just hitting it out of the park. So Batman Detective Comics is the 6th part in the Night of the Monster Men. It is just a really good, it goes across a couple of comics. If you pick up the series, it's well worth the read. Like I said, this Rebirth, all the DC books, I could put every single one up every week. They're just that strong right now. Let's see if they can hold it up. I hope they do, because it's been a lot of fun. So then my next pick is actually All-Star Batman, number 3. It doesn't have the $2.99 price that most of the Rebirths do. It's a $4.99, but it has a glossy cover, and it's a little bit higher quality. And it's a little longer, but it is a great story that they're running with the All-Star Batman. So back to Marvel with Mosaic number 1, out of the Uncanny Inhumans. Super popular book. It's hard to find one out there on the shelves, but you can find them on eBay, and they're going up every day. His first appearance, I want to say it's number 11, but I have to check. It might be 10 or 11. It's hard to keep all these in your head, sir. So yeah, another great book, Mosaic, a new superhero, and it's a chance to jump on at number 1 and see what happens with him. So come on down to your local comic shop and buy some books.